afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to our next innovation session where we're going to focus on cybersecurity. I hope everyone's having a great Zenith Live so far, and you've had some really good breakout sessions along the way. And just like earlier, we're going to talk a little bit about things we have available today, but we're also going to be talking about some things that are in the future, so I have to show our safe harbor slide. So to set up how we think about security here, you have to keep in mind that security has to be right all the time. You can't just sometimes block the threats and expect that to be okay. And at Zscaler, we take that very, very seriously and have a full set of layered defenses to make sure that we keep our customers as safe as possible. It starts with blocking based on known bad destinations. That gets a lot of things, and to be honest, that's where a lot of the competition spends all their time and focuses on and don't go deeper than that. But at Zscaler, we go further and we make sure with full SSL inspection at scale, we're running all of the content through all of our engines, our AV, our advanced threat protection, our cloud firewall, IPS, even our AI, ML-based detections that we've been working on to make sure that we block everything that's known bad, and even use a sandbox for detonating unknown files to see how they behave, and if they do anything bad, we make sure and block that and use that cloud effect to make sure we're also protecting the rest of the cloud. First one that finds it in there, everybody gets protected, and all the way back up the chain, you get that protection. That URL's marked bad, the IPS signature might get updated, et cetera. So all that works together to keep you safe. And then that last line is on the content delivery method, where you can use browser isolation, where anytime the risk is elevated, you can make sure and only deliver pixels and not deliver that content. So over the last year, we've been busy making improvements along all of those different areas. We've delivered a few hundred features across our platform, and we're not stopping there. The rest of this session is going to focus on the cool new stuff and make a few new announcements on interesting things that we're bringing to market. But before we get to that, I'm going to introduce our next guest, who's going to go through some behind-the-scenes work that we do to keep our customers safe around kind of deconstructing some of those new and emerging threats. And with that, I want to welcome to stage our Chief Information Security Officer, Deepan Desai.
Thank you, Steve. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. Hopefully, everyone's out of the afternoon food coma. I can see that a lot of the people fell for it. But we have a lot of cool innovations that we'll be talking about as part of this session. So let me get right into it. We have a global team of security experts called Threat Labs that has access to 500 trillion daily signals. And the reason I'm mentioning this is the team leverages these signals to track threat landscape, discover targeted attacks, and derive unique insights. We have tactically aligned the team across 4 critical stages of the attack chain, and the goal over here is to have the right expertise in place at the right level, so we're able to break that chain at multiple stages. Now, some of the intelligence and tracking coverage work that the team does behind the scenes, I'll show you a couple case studies on that. But besides tracking and coverage activity, the team also builds new detection prototype models that gets productized as we see newer tactics being used by the bad guys. The team also is responsible for providing security services. So we have many of the customers leveraging Threat Labs as part of their SOC team to kind of perform hunting activity, discover new stuff, and then work closely to improve the overall security posture. So let me get right into the first case study. This is where the team detected and Zscaler Zero Trust Exchange basically protected thousands of global organizations against a brand new zero-day vulnerability that was impacting almost all Windows operating system. This is where Cloud Sandbox flagged an in-the-wild exploitation attempt. The goal for the adversary over here was to exploit this zero-day, establish persistence inside the environment, and then do more damage. Threat Labs team quickly analyzed the payload and confirmed that this was a zero-day. We got in touch with Microsoft. Microsoft was pretty quick in their response. They included a security update as part of their upcoming monthly security update itself. Now, the point I'm trying to make with this case study is the time between the zero-day getting discovered, the patch becoming available, and the patch actually being applied varies across various organizations. And this is what represents a significant window of opportunity that these bad guys capitalize on, and then they weaponize payloads and get inside your environment. In this case, and in many other cases, Zscaler customers are proactively protected using our sandbox, using our inline inspection, using the work that the team does behind the scene. And you can learn more about discoveries such as the one that I mentioned and many more by going to research.zscaler.com. This is where we will call out all of these new things, new findings. One number that I'll share on this front, as part of our zero-day initiative, we've discovered and reported more than 100 new zero-day vulnerabilities. And I'm only talking about the major vendors like Microsoft, Adobe, Apple, and there are CVs assigned to that. So for the next case study, we'll look at DarkAngels, a ransomware group. So DarkAngels, those of you that don't know, it's one of the most prolific ransomware group out there that has been fairly successful. And they target technology industry vertical, education, healthcare, and finance. And they've been very successful in terms of getting inside the environment and also getting large ransom payments. So Threat Labs team has been tracking them very closely. And what we'll do is we'll go through a real example from this year where they managed to get inside a large publicly traded company's environment. They successfully breached it, and then they also got the ransom paid out to them. So let's go through the step-by-step attack chain. So in this case, threat actors sent out emails to multiple employees belonging to this organization. One of the users fell for the attack. This resulted in exploitation and installation of stage 1 payload on the endpoint. Now this endpoint, the compromised endpoint, was connected to a legacy flat network using VPN. What the threat actor did next is they started running the recon tools. They discovered a juicy flat attack surface, right? A flat network where they hit Active Directory. They also saw all the assets inside the environment. They discovered crown jewel applications. And they also had visibility into all the machines that were connected remotely over the VPN. Once they are done with this lateral propagation privilege escalation stage, they will then establish persistence by installing the stage 1 backdoor payload on all of these discovered assets. Now, this is followed by data exfiltration. In this case, we're talking about more than 20 terabytes of data being stolen from this organization's environment. And they leveraged 7-zip compressed archive, which was being sent over TLS to Megasync, which is a cloud SaaS-based service. And yeah, I mean, it was 24 terabytes of data that got stolen by these guys over here. Once the data exfiltration was done, on a Friday evening, they deployed ransomware payload using the stage 1 backdoor. First, it hits your domain controller, Active Directory. Then it navigates to all the on-prem assets. And in this case, we also saw them pushing the payload to remotely connected endpoints, encrypting the files even on those assets that were connected over VPN. This is where DarkAngels group will show the ransom node. They demanded ransom. The organization in this case chose to pay ransom. So let me ask a question to the audience. Right? Hopefully none of you guys have seen this, and I don't expect you guys to read this, but this is a real report written by DarkAngels ransomware group for a victim after they chose to pay the ransom. And this actually outlines step by step how did they get inside the victim's environment, and they're kind of giving them advice on what they need to do in order to prevent that attack from happening. If I were to zoom in, It starts with discovering the attack surface. In this case, they leverage VPN to get inside the environment. They will move laterally. This is where they scan large IP subnets. So they actually call out the ranges that were scanned in the environment to learn about the overall structure. And then finally, they exfil large volume of data. And they even rub it in by saying your network speed was very, very good. It allowed us to exfil 300 gigs per day. So we call this ransomware pen testing report, and unfortunately, victim paid $5.5 million for this report. So look, we all know about the problem, and we know this is one of the top priorities for most global CISOs. So here is how I would encourage you all to look at it when you're planning holistic ransomware defense. We saw ransomware threat actors also using those 4 stages of the attack, so I'll use that as a reference. They will find you, they will attack you, they will compromise you. This is where Zscaler helps you hide that attack surface. With full inline TLS inspection, you're able to prevent that initial payload from getting in. They will move laterally as part of the next stage. This is where Zscaler's user-to-app segmentation, app protection, and deception technologies allows you to reduce that blast radius to the user that actually made the mistake. And then finally, they're after your data. Just like we saw, they're exfilling large volume of data. This is where DLP with contextual control, AI/ML-based data classification allows you to set those granular policy to prevent the data from leaking out. Now, one of the primary points that I'll make over here is, you probably have seen this slide before, you really need to have all of these technologies integrated as part of a single platform. If you invest in a bunch of point products that's solving part of the puzzle, by the time the third-party attack or even your team identifies an attack in progress, it's already too late, right? Because these things move very quick. In fact, one of the stats that I'll share, do you know how long it takes for ransomware to encrypt 100,000 files in your environment? It's less than 5 minutes, right? So that's how quickly they move. So by the time the correlation happens in the back end, you get the signal, the damage is already done. So to wrap, key takeaways from a CISO perspective, looking at the DarkAngels ransomware sequence. And my only key takeaway is ransomware pen test reports are expensive. OK, bad joke. All right. So real key takeaways. Number one is you really need to eliminate VPN. And by this, I mean you need to look at both on-prem as well as the in-cloud version of VPN, because by architecture, it provides a juicy attack surface that these threat actors continue to leverage in order to conduct successful attacks. Number two, and I'm kind of repeating this, prioritize user-to-app segmentation. Don't get into the overly complicated world of, hey, I need to get micro-segmentation done. Start simple, user-to-app segmentation. This is where you will be able to reduce that blast radius and contain the attack to a single incident. And then finally, having that inline DLP with full TLS inspection will allow you to prevent large volume of data egressing your environment. A simple file type-based contextual control in your DLP policy will prevent the data from leaking out, like we saw in case of DarkAngels ransomware attack. So with this, I will now invite my Zscaler partner in crime, Dhaval Sharma, SVP Product Management. He will be walking us through some of the cool innovations that we're announcing in each of these attack stages. Dhaval?
All right, good evening, everyone. Deepak does talk about a lot of scary stuff. But good thing is that we got you covered. We eat, sleep, and dream security. Not all the time, that will be weird, but few of the innovations that we are rolling out now actually map to the same attack sequence. When we build product capabilities on the security side, we've tried to focus on the kill chain and how we map these innovations to the kill chain. So stage one of every kill chain is discovery, right? This is how attackers figure out who you are, what your exposure is. Some of you have used the attack surface management report, a point-in-time report that we generate for you, and have seen your exposures in the product. Now, we are taking it one step further. We are introducing an internet attack surface analysis tool which will give you full visibility into what is your organization's attack surface. It will give you a visibility of where your applications are distributed. You can click in and see where those applications are running. It is exposure of your namespace, your domain names, your IPs, right? Then you can see a trend of these exposures. First thing that we have done in the past is like we gave you a report. Now we are automating that to run that report all the time, telling you how it is trending over a period of time. It tells you what kind of vulnerabilities we are seeing in your environment, or how many of your namespace exposures are there. Then we basically go and tell you how severe these vulnerabilities are, and then we are also able to bring them together and tell you how do they map to your application assets. We can tell you where your exposed servers are sitting. Do you have servers that have vulnerable TLS? Do you have servers that have vulnerabilities or CVEs? Are you using outdated version of Apache, for example? So you get all those exposures shown to you. Next, we are able to show you your public cloud instances. As we move applications to the cloud, we do lift and shift, right? Sometimes we end up overexposing these services. As we think about the control, knowing where these assets are is very important. And that is exactly what we are focusing on. We tell you exactly what public cloud your exposure is. A lot of customers tell us, I'm just on AWS. They are surprised to see they have like dev environments in Azure or GCP. So knowing where these applications are is very important. Why do you need to know this? Because without knowing where these assets are, you cannot remediate it. And remediation of this is very easy through our ZPA service. ZPA gives you a segmentation framework, user-to-app segmentation, as Deepan talked about. But we have extended that concept, and in tomorrow's keynote, we're going to talk more about it, how we extend that for workload to workload, branch workload to workload segmentation as well. Now, all of us use various kind of applications for day-to-day like being productive. Like we use Office 365. Instead of using like thick clients like Word or SharePoint or Acrobat readers, we have a lot of productivity documents that we are opening directly inside browsers. A lot of threats are embedded inside that. So second area where we continue to innovate is around finding these early indicators of compromise. One such capability that we are introducing is bringing our isolation service, which is pixel streaming from the cloud, a lot of you use it, and our cloud sandbox service together. So in this case, I'm going to walk you through an example. What we are doing is you are picking specific file types, like Office 365 files. I'm also picking a PDF file example here. And what I'm doing simply here is setting up this new policy criteria, which is isolation and quarantine. What it is doing is when we see a new file that we haven't seen before, right, or new Word document which is embedded inside a browser or a PDF, it will basically give you an option to view that file while that is being sandboxed. So make your employees more productive while the file is being scanned for any new zero-day attack, right? You activate these policies. So user who's looking at this file, we are clearly communicating to them that your file is being sandboxed. So you have access to this file, but this file might not be clean. Then we are also have the header at the top, which tells you that this is coming through browser isolation service. What happens is we find a vulnerability or a exposure on this file due to which we block this file. At that point, we basically blocked this user from downloading this file because it was in a containerized browser session from where user cannot download it. Now, sandbox analysis found it malicious. What we are able to do now is we basically are able to disarm the harmful content, and we flatten that file. If it's a Word file, we'll flatten it to a PDF file, and you can download a clean version of that file on your desktop. So a malicious file you can access while it is being analyzed, so you are productive. It could be a code coming from a vendor that you need to look at last of the quarter, but you are also able to then download a clean version of file. So we are doing the first level of content disarm for you. Pretty cool. Now, second area where we are extending the machine learning capability in our sandbox. We already have a instant verdict capability when files are clean, right? When they're benign files. So we give you an early indicator, these are benign files, you're able to download it. Now, with the new innovation that we are introducing, we are introducing AI-based instant verdict for borderline malicious and actual malicious files. So using our ML algorithms and static analysis of the content, what we are able to do is when the file is seen, while file is with sandbox, we are able to pick that signal, and within few seconds, we are able to tell you that file is bad, and in your transaction logs, you will be able to go and see that this was a machine learning block that triggered at that time. If we use a scoring framework between 0 to 100. So typically, files which are outright bad should be blocked, scored between 90 to 100. Files that are borderline, which needs full analysis, are in the score region of 70 to 90. We also have a quarantine capability, which means we keep refreshing your browser until the verdict comes back. So if this file was deemed as a file which was borderline, the verdict will immediately tell you that this file was quarantined as a result. So a lot less configuration, and the policy action will say that this was a machine learning-driven quarantine. So with combination of the content disarm we talked about, machine learning to do instant verdict, it makes the efficacy of sandbox much more effective. Now let's move on to the next area. A lot of attacks that we see in the ransomware kill chain are triggered on your Active Directory. This is one of the reasons we are introducing an integrated identity threat detection response capability on Zscaler platform, which is continuously looking at attack surface of your identity inside your Active Directory, hygiene of your Active Directory, like how frequently changes are happening, do you have misconfigurations, and then finding threats that are tied to your directory. I'm going to walk you through an example, right? Let's say your domain is example.com, right? And many of you are using our client connector, so you don't need to install a new agent. Your client connector might be connected to the domain controller. So I'm able to pick a client on which our client connector is running, which is domain joined. Then I basically allow you to pick that client and basically connect to domain controller and Active Directory to start scanning your Active Directory. I'll go for a coffee break. I go for extending lunch breaks, actually, so let's stick to the lunch break. I come back from the lunch break, my report will be ready. This is point-in-time analysis right at that point, but we also do continuous scan. You can pick your frequency every few minutes or hours. You can keep scanning your Active Directory. We'll tell you what is your overall domain risk. What are the focus areas where we found misconfigurations, and how you can remediate them. Is remediation easy or complicated? Then we'll tell you your top 10 risky users. Many of our security practitioners follow MITRE attack framework. So we map these vulnerabilities that we find, that misconfigurations we find, to the MITRE attack framework as well. To go a step further, we give you a list of all your misconfigurations we found. I'm picking an example of combustible accounts that we found in your misconfiguration. Then I can tell you there are 4 accounts that were seen that have been exposed to this. We tell you what is the issue. If you don't fix it, what will happen? There are videos, sequences of all of them that tell you step by step what is going on. Then we tell you, how do you fix this? We are able to give you specific commands, those commands that you can run on your Active Directory to fix those misconfigurations. So a wide variety of these issues could be done. Now, many a times, directory teams are different in organizations, security teams are different, right? We are always looking at changes that are happening in your environment also, and showing you a list of those changes. In this example, I'm picking a change that might be linked to DC sync attack. What will happen is a security practitioner will say, this looks suspicious. I cannot revoke this change. I'm going to add it to safe list to accept that risk, but I'm going to keep looking for this change. Does it lead to any form of attack or compromise? So you can set a bunch of these permissions to then start looking for detection of these attacks in your environment. So DC sync, DC shadow, bunch of those are added here. Then, as you know, we know the clients, we know the users. Our client is running on them. We are able to determine when these attacks actually happen. And we can then set up or orchestrate a rule that can prevent that attack as well. So it's identity threat detection response. I talked about detection. We have response playbooks as well. Response could be coming through detection, through our deception product, where we have decoys. We have endpoint decoys as well. We also have ZPA. In this case, I'm basically revoking that access or reducing the blast radius for that user who is seen to be compromised, and removing their access to certain applications. So basically, when they try to connect to an application, we are able to revoke their access. So tying this into broader platform instead of creating another point product makes it much more powerful and functional. Now, let's talk about how we prevent lateral movement, right? All the attacks that we talked about, Deepan gave you examples, how quickly these attacks propagate laterally. Let's talk a little bit about innovations that we are rolling out in stopping lateral propagation. And in this area, in ZPA, we have focused quite a bit on to simplify user-to-app segmentation. A lot of our customers adopt ZPA, and they take their attack surface and put it behind ZPA, so they do not have any exposure of their namespace on the internet for private applications. Now, to take it one step further, we introduced ML-based segmentation last year, where after analyzing traffic patterns, we started telling you that these departments go to these applications, you can set up policies, so you can create more effective policies. One of the capabilities that our customers have been asking us to add to make segmentation more easy to set up, especially when you're starting on that journey, is to connect to systems like CMDB. Many of our customers have used CMDBs extensively, and what they are doing here is they are bringing a list of their applications from CMDB with additional context like who's the owner of the application, where the application is hosted, et cetera, in a CMDB exportable file. When you import that file into ZPA, what will happen at that point is, in this example, I'm picking 3 applications like Jira, Boomi, vSphere. What we are doing at that point is we are analyzing, do we see traffic for these applications in ZPA, or any app segmentation is configured on this or not? If it is not configured, what ZPA is going to do is it's going to start recommending you app clustering. It will tell you these set of applications are things that belong together. And with a click of a button, you can start a segmentation workflow on these applications. We take it a step further, right? You can say, this is my namespace, IP space on which this application is running. But instead of just creating app segment based on the namespace, I'm also aware of where these applications typically communicate, what ports it is communicating on. So we bring those observed ports together, and we stitch it with these applications and can restrict the app segments that we create only for those specific ports. So it makes segmentation very, very effective in this world. I talked about ML-based segmentation. We are taking this recommendation engine one step further. So one of the core innovation that we are rolling out in this area is understanding the application behavior and understanding which users are accessing certain applications. Now, if we pick an example of this application here that we have seen cluster, which has similarity in terms of the ports that being used and the application pattern, or same homogeneous set of users who are accessing it, we can give you a recommendation where we can say, here is a set of applications that are exhibiting common set of traits. One of them is the corporate IT users who are accessing that application, and what ports this application is being accessed over. A lot of time, within a large department like corporate IT, there would be specific set of users only who would access those applications, right? So we can then recommend you the group of users who are accessing that application. You can download that list, and you can then create a dynamic group, so the access of those applications is reduced significantly. Now, think of the attack surface reduction. Literally from thousands of employees, it comes down to tens of employees, so massive attack surface reduction. To make your segmentation journey even easier, we are introducing pattern-based application segmentation. Beyond the broader segmentation framework, where a lot of customers start with a star.star policy, they have to define segmentation policies one by application name. You might have 7 Active Directory servers. You might be adding 7 more in the future. So instead of making you go through this manual process, We are introducing this pattern matching concept where you can define a pattern, and no matter what applications you will add in that namespace will automatically be segmented. So this brings that discipline in your application teams, IT teams, so they can start following this name pattern, and then your application namespace gets automatically segmented as well. Second area is on adaptive risks. Right? So this is a big focus area. We'll talk more about it. But for private applications, we are able to take specific actions where, when someone is coming after your key crown jewel applications, they are typically not going to come from where your typical employees come from. So in this world, what I'm telling you about is like, we are building this adaptive access control. I'm giving you 3 examples here. One is you can put policies based on where the incoming traffic from a user is coming from. You can put specific restrictions on it. Or you can pick the client device posture. Posture could be Zscaler posture, like if it is a corporate device or not. Does my device have a EDR agent like CrowdStrike running on it, for example? And third example in this, oops, I went ahead. So third example is this in the user risk score. So risk scores are computed dynamically in Zscaler World for every single user based on their app traffic that is going through us. So the best thing about this is not just used when user is connecting to the application, but we can also use this to revoke the access if user is already access is already established to your application as well. So this brings the contextual access of a user to the application that they're accessing as well. And lastly, a lot of our customers care for cybersecurity. When you have private applications that are being accessed through ZPA, we have world-class security controls that we have built in our core ZIA security engine. We are bringing that traffic inspection with a click of a policy where you can pick an app segment, your crown jewel applications in this case, and subject it to the same inspection policies that you have built for internet-bound traffic. Now, one capability on the lateral propagation, and again, if you think about how third parties or remote users who are not part of your organization, when they access your private applications, right? You want to know what changes they are making inside your organization. You think about these 3 stages of attack, data exfiltration, we'll talk tomorrow when we have data protection session, but you also want to know what is happening when users get access, so insights and analytics are really important. So one capability that we are introducing is called session recording for privileged remote access. This could be done for all kind of remote access. I'm taking an example of privileged remote access. So when you set up a privilege policy, a privilege portal, now you can set up a session recording on that, which essentially means when in the policy is simple checkbox that you can enable in segmentation policy. Now, what will happen is when the transaction happens, we will have a link to the recorded session in the transaction log. What that really does is once you can go there, download this file, and see what changes a user or a remote user actually made inside that session, and we record that session and give a full playback for you. So very important from forensics and investigation purpose. A lot of you are using our ZIA product to understand the threat patterns, et cetera. So another very key innovation that we're introducing is a new cybersecurity dashboard inside the product. So a single pane of glass to tell you all your security exposures by various types of threats that we are blocking, telling you number of incidents that we have blocked, and then telling you basically different kind of exploits and the recent protection that threat labs that Deepan was talking about has been rolling out. In this world, I'll give you one specific example where we have browser exploits, right? Common use case, a common threat that we see in our world. I can see different kinds of browser exploits in this example, like a JavaScript exploit. I can click here, and I can immediately see what are the details, and then I can click and see who are the impacted system as a result of it, right? So you can have your SOC playbooks, your remediation kick in immediately. So very quick click down from a top level to a user's device level with few clicks, and you get full visibility into it. I have one more very interesting innovation to share with you, and okay, this was not the innovation. But this is someone who might be very excited with this innovation. And that is having a packet capture that is triggered in the cloud, which SOC operators really care for. And this could really up-level your security in terms of forensics that you want to do on top of all the metadata, all the logging that Zscaler provides to you. So it's pretty simple. You will be able to create a packet capture rule, either in URL filtering rule set or in our firewall IPS rule set. And the way this works is I'm giving an example of a block policy here, where if you set up a block policy, you will be able to create a packet capture rule along with it. We will also trigger this packet capture on certain risky behaviors, like transaction might not be blocked, but users' risk score is actually increasing. So it might be a good time to have that packet capture initiated. The moment you have initiated that packet capture, now some of you will say, I want this packet to be sent somewhere that I care for, or Zscaler, you keep this packet capture and show it to me. At this point, we'll give you both the options. And when packet capture is initiated for a given log, you'll be able to filter those logs, and you'll be able to download those packet captures from Zscaler log or export to your SIEM. All those capabilities will be supported. There's a lot more that I can show you, but we have shortage of time. I will be more than happy to talk to you about a lot of other cyber innovations that we are doing on our platform. But to share insights on some of the innovations that I talked about, I would like to welcome Thomas Likas, Head of Cybersecurity and Digital Trust at Takeda, as well as Rohit Kohli, VP and Information Security at Genpact, as well as Deepan Desai to the stage. We are good. All right. So Deepan, you look very excited. By the way, I have never seen Deepan smiling. He's serious. Sometimes he smiles in front of customers, never in front of me. So Deepan, what were the 3 things that you really enjoyed in this set of innovations that we are rolling out?
Sure. So for the record, that picture is what sealed the deal on the feature, PCAP feature. But yeah, my number 1 was segmentation. That is very, very important. I think that simplifies the process of implementing user-to-app segmentation. Number 2 is ITDR. Again, Active Directory is your crown jewel. That is what threat actors go after. Having an orchestrated response, automated workflows over there, very important. Number 3 is packet capture.
All right. Rohit, I would love to get your perspective, but can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your organization, Genpact, before we go there?
Sure. So Genpact is a professional services organization that specializes in digital transformation, consulting, and business process outsourcing. We have 100,000 plus employees spread across in 30 countries, serving clients in different sectors, including banking and financial, healthcare, consumer goods, and manufacturing. I lead the security engineering, product and application security at Genpact, and we have been a Zscaler customer for a little over 5 years now, and it's been a great partnership.
Thank you. And Thomas, I have one specific question for you. I call you Mr. Zero Trust internally, but tell us a little bit about Takeda and your role within Takeda as well.
Sure. So I'm Thomas Likas. I'm the enterprise architect for security at Takeda. Among my many activities, I'm very much involved in Zero Trust, yes, as part of a larger transformational theme and activity. Transformation is very important for Takeda. As you can see, we're quite old as a company. We're founded over 240 years ago. We're a Japanese company, but with a true global footprint, right? We have over 170 sites, I think, all around the world. 50,000, 52,000 employees by now, 20,000 external, almost 70,000 users in total. We've been growing with acquisitions and mergers in the past a lot, which, as you can imagine, brings a lot of technical challenges, a lot of complexity. And that's why we partnered up with Zscaler to help us solve some of these and help us transform truly as a company.
All right, Rohit, you and I have talked about, like, you run security operations and you work with ZI and ZPA both. So from your perspective, something like packet captures, which is important in a SOC playbook, how do you see that fitting in your overall playbook with what we are rolling out?
So packet capture will help us to solve 4 tactical operational challenges. To start with, first is network traffic analysis. Using packet capture, a SOC analyst can near real-time perform the traffic analysis or conduct any retrospective analysis. This will help him uncover any malicious activities, such as unauthorized access, any lateral movements, command and control communications, or data exfiltration. Second, it's going to help with malware analysis. A SOC analyst could use a packet capture to perform the malware analysis. It'll help him to understand the behavior of the malware, understand the origin of the malware, and how it interacts with the system. Third, it helps with threat hunting. Packet capture helps us to uncover known and unknown security threats and helps us to identify a potential indicator of compromise that has not been identified by any other security technologies. Lastly, it helps with forensic investigations. Packet capture is a critical piece of evidence in forensic investigations. It helps us to create a series of actions that an attacker has performed, and it's a critical evidence in any legal proceedings.
Thomas, question for you, right? You have been an early design partner, customer for us, ZPA. We validate a lot of ideas with you. You were one of the customers who started on the segmentation journey early on. Walk us through a little bit about how do you approach segmentation now with so much automation we are bringing out segmentation.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So zero trust is a journey. It's not a technology you can buy. It's not a button you can push. You guys made it very easy spinning up ZPA, deploying it. I was actually joking with somebody this morning how I stood it up at Takeda pretty much by myself. Not an exaggeration. It's easy. But it's just the first step. Going from a model where everything is accessible, just because user and application happen to be on the same network, on the same side of the firewall, to a model where everything is accessible just because there's an access policy that matches the user and the destination, explicitly defining this destination. It's technically doable in ZPA. However, it's a little bit of an operational challenge at times. Very simply, we're a large company. We have thousands upon thousands of applications, and we're not really good at documenting them. I'm not sure if that's a Takeda problem only. However, I also feel like as security and network practitioners, we're not always very close to the applications. We don't understand the application architecture very often and how our users are accessing it, right? So these innovations that you just presented, they will help tremendously. On one side, the import from the CMDB, which we can talk about how to operationalize that. Maybe it's a one-time thing or a regular cadence. Maybe more importantly in my head, though, the machine learning that you introduced, the grouping and the contextual information that is presented by ZPA will allow tremendously to speed up the rate at which we can segment applications properly, right? Take away some of the operational burdens. Maybe it won't solve the problem completely, but it will help us push us further into this journey.
Cool. That's very cool. Deepan, you had something to add.
Yeah, no, I think segmentation, like I've been repeating myself probably third time, very, very critical. I mean, everyone starts with journey from moving from VPN to ZPA, for instance, in our case. Now with this automation, you are also able to quickly go from start policy to having meaningful segmentation implemented, protecting your crown jewel. So start with your crown jewel, make sure you have these things implemented, and reduce your internal attack surface.
Okay. So my last question, right, for all the panelists here, right? You know, identity is a key pillar on zero trust. Deepan, we know that a lot of identity attacks on Active Directory lead to ransomware attacks. So you have seen specific examples. Rohit, we have talked about how you look at the identity threat detection response space. So why don't you give us some insights into how you have approached ITDR within Genpact?
Sure. So most of the cyber attacks, recent cyber attacks, if you look at it, identity takes the center stage. Therefore, in my view, I think three things are extremely critical. Bring stronger focus on basics, which is logging. Perform background verification for your privileged users. Perform account reconciliation. And establishing identity baseline is extremely critical. Second is configuration management. Like Deepan mentioned, AD is one of the crown jewels for any organization. Maintain AD hygiene by monitoring for riskier configurations. Example, constrained delegation, GPB password exposure, or look for vulnerable certificates within your environment. Third, stop pass the hash, golden ticket, and Kerberos roasting attacks. Some of these are very hard to detect, but can be solved by applying simple mitigations like increasing password complexity. Create a choke point by restricting access to your domain controllers from your Bastion host or your privileged access management system. Monitor for your service accounts. And lastly, disable legacy protocols like NTLM.
Okay. Great. So Thomas, parting words for this audience. We have a mix of customers who are on segmentation journey, who are starting with their segmentation journey. So how would you recommend to our customers and partners how should they start with how should they approach segmentation on day 0?
Day 0, with the new features, go talk to your SimDB folks first and let them give you a list. Maybe beyond that, start broadly. Start with maybe a wildcard even. Wildcard sounds bad, right? And it's maybe not perfect. It's not a granular access. But if you think about what your exposure was before with VPN, with simply everything is accessible, to go to a wildcard where maybe everything that's just whatever, star.acme.com, whatever your domain is accessible, it's a huge reduction in your attack surface already. Right. Because nobody will just attack you randomly. They would have to attack you specifically, right, with your domain. And then work from there. Right? Look at the data your CPA is giving you. What are the applications that your users is accessing most frequently? How they're accessing them, from where? And start going down the list effectively. Go to the smaller applications, to the more specific ones, and listen to your users.
All right. With that, thank you for joining me here, gentlemen. And I'll move on to my next section and introduce my next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you.
As you imagine, identity is critical. We are continuously evolving on identity being a pillar of zero trust architecture. To walk you through some of the identity-centric innovations, I would like to introduce Eric Fazendine, Director of Product Management at Zscaler. Thank you.
All right. So last year you heard about our goals to unify identity across our products. Today I'm happy to discuss what we've released. ZS Login is the identity service for all of Zscaler. It simplifies identity management and authentication for administrators and soon for end users. This service unlocks new identity use cases for your zero trust architecture. In the first release, we focused on the administrator. ZS Login is the central point of entry for administrators to all Zscaler products. If your administrators authenticate with Zscaler-hosted credentials, they only need to maintain a single set of credentials. If your administrator is SSO from a SAML identity provider, you only need to maintain a single connection with that IDP. There's a lot more I could get into, but let me demonstrate a couple of things that we've built. The demo I'm going to give here, we're going to authenticate as an administrator with hosted credentials. And I want to show off the hosted credential experience so I can show off our support for passwordless multi-factor authentication. What you see here is the one and only one login screen to Zscaler. But I want to draw your attention to the second checkbox. In this case, I'm going to authenticate with a FIDO security key. FIDO is an industry standard that enables a passwordless multi-factor authentication that is phishing resistant. In this case, the two factors consist of what I have, a private key on this device, and what I am, my fingerprint biometric. So 2 factors of authentication, and I won't need to use a password. Now I'm using this USB key, but you could also use the fingerprint reader on your device. The difference being that this USB key is considered a roaming authenticator. I can go to other devices to authenticate with it. So I click Next on the login screen, and my browser prompts me for my registered FIDO authenticator. I insert my USB key and put my finger on the fingerprint reader. And with that, then I am authenticated to Zscaler. What you see here are the list of services that I'm entitled to administer. Each tile is dynamically displayed based on the services your organization uses and the services that each admin is entitled to. By clicking on a tile, the admin is seamlessly brought into that admin console. So I can click the private access tile and seamlessly access ZPA. Or I can click the internet access tile, and I'm in ZIA. The last thing I want to mention about the administrator use case is that with ZS Login, we can support automatic provisioning and deprovisioning of administrators from your identity providers by using SCIM. And this also applies to the entitlements that the administrator will receive. So support for administrators is available, but we've also made a lot of progress in our support for end users. The core principles for supporting end users are the same. There's one identity record with entitlements to the services in which that user should be enrolled. And just like for administrators, you only need to maintain a single connection with your identity provider. Now, whenever multiple services are referring to a particular user, we will know absolutely whether that's the same user or a different user. So now we'll have this guaranteed unique identity. And that's going to make it much easier for us to share all contextual data about a user throughout the Zscaler ecosystem. So for example, it'll make it very easy for us to share things like the user risk profile, whether deception has detected any nefarious activity, whether ZS login has detected any anomalies to the way a user authenticated. And not only will we be able to share these signals across Zscaler services, but amongst third parties as well. Maybe a third-party identity provider has detected a risky user based on some activity that occurred outside of Zscaler and wants to share that information with Zscaler to help protect your organization. Policies at Zscaler could then be defined to limit this user's access or even send the user back to the identity provider to re-authenticate. What you're looking at here is a user record in ZS login. And with the work that we're doing, it's going to make it very easy for us to provide a way for you to centrally review all contextual data about a user in real time. In this case, we're showing examples from ZIA, Client Connector, ZS Login, and Azure Active Directory. Great, so let's say you want to use this information to protect your organization. Let's say you want to detect risky users and limit their ability to upload sensitive data or access sensitive resources. With the work that we're doing, it's going to make it very easy for you to define context criteria for policies that take in signals from a bunch of different sources, such as the user risk profile, endpoint security, any anomalies from authentication, or activity detected by deception. Likewise, it'll make it just as easy for us to define access policies using that exact same set of criteria. So this means that any policy on any service throughout Zscaler will have access to the exact same context data, and ultimately you could define the exact same criteria for those policies. Now, we already have well over 100 different types of contextual data, so making this easy to use is going to be the next trick. So we're also looking at ways to enable you to centrally define a range of context signals and their thresholds. And therefore, rather than maintaining long lists of granular criteria in every one of your policies throughout Zscaler, you can use this central definition and refer to it from your policies. This will make it easier to use and ensure that your policies are more consistent. All right, that's everything I needed to cover today. Thank you for your time, and please help me welcome Steve House back to the stage.
Thank you, Eric. So, wow, that's a lot of stuff. Pretty impressive list of innovations we covered in a very short time frame, and we're a little bit over, so I know you're all looking for more information on this, and we do have breakouts scheduled that go deeper in a lot of these technologies and innovations that we've been announcing, so I encourage everyone to take a look, get on the schedule and go in and ask more, or stop by the demo booths where some of the PMs are hanging out, where you can see a live demo of this and get more information. And with that, I want to thank you all again and enjoy the rest of the show.